Hello, Rock Ridge and Saltridge teachers. My name is Jeff Melza. I'm with the Center for Professional Development. As part of your presentation today on the integration of IB and the yellow card class, we are going to be going through the process of deconstructing a world-class outcome and a central idea. You will have presenters in the room to offer you up support, and you'll also be able to come back and access this video at a later time to help you as needed. All right, so the first step that we have is we want you to, in this deconstruction, identify one world-class outcome and the central idea from one of your units. You'll notice in the sample that we're going to be talking about today, we've already taken care of identifying both of those two components for you. Now, after you've went about the process of identifying your world-class outcome and your central idea, the next thing we want to look at is the skills or those verbs that are in that world-class outcome. And we want to identify those. So the first one, if we take a look up at our world-class outcome, evaluating the relationship between multiple cause and effects to formulate a prediction of possible outcomes, the verb we can identify right away is evaluate. Now, the next step in this process is we want you to take the time and look at all of the other verbs, all of those other skills students would have to be able to be a successful evaluator. So, for example, one of those things students are going to need to be able to do is they're going to need to be able to examine evidence. Now, in our sample, we continue to work our way down, and you'll notice we take that list all the way down to that comprehend level. So we want to identify all of those skills. All right, now we've had a chance to break down the skills needed to successfully understand our world-class outcome. We want to take a few minutes and look at the knowledge that students are going to need to understand. And these are going to be the nouns that are present in that world-class outcome. So when I take a look at my world-class outcomes, the nouns that I would identify are going to be relationships, cause and effects, prediction, and outcomes. So those are those terms students are going to need to be familiar with in order to understand that world-class outcome. In addition to doing that with the world-class outcome, we also want to look at our central idea. So in this case, we're looking at there are many natural changes on Earth's surface affecting humans and the environment. So what I did with this one is I looked at those nouns that I felt students would need to have an understanding of. And in this case, I looked at science content, which were my first two bullets, and social studies content, which was my third bullet. When I looked over the state standards, I identified a couple major ideas, and those are those macro content ideas, those big ideas I want all my students exposed to. So forces of change, natural changes, and humans in the environment. I want all my students exposed to that. Within each one of those, there's also a great deal of specific content knowledge that I want to make sure that I list. That content knowledge is going to be very, very important because it's going to provide me a lot of options and choices as I look at identifying and creating activities for stage 3 in my unit. But I also want to understand that not every one of my students is going to get equal exposure to those pieces. So now that we've had a chance to unpack both our world-class outcome and our central idea, we want to take a moment to go back to those skills that we identified with our world-class outcome. Now when we did that, you'll notice that we took our list and we broke them down into two separate colors. We had those terms that were at a high level of blooms, and we had those ones at the low level. Now we oftentimes have teachers ask us why we listed those low-level pieces. So we want to take a minute to talk about that. When we take a look at Bloom's taxonomy, those pieces down there are down at the base level, so that remembering, understanding, and applying component. And it's very important that we want students to get a chance to practice these skills as they're working through their content, because this practice is not only going to give them a chance to see some success with that content, but it's also going to let them see and get a better understanding of that world-class outcome because they need to develop that strong basic foundation. Now we want to take a few minutes to take a look at that skill list And instead of focusing on those bottom ones, those lower level of blooms, we want to look at that higher level component of blooms. So if we take a minute and look at our Bloom's taxonomy, most of our students are going to start that unit down here. But our goal by the end is to get them where they're working up at that top level, at that creating and evaluating level. And that's very important with the world-class outcomes, because with that evaluative piece that's now added into EPR, we want to make sure that students are getting that firm understanding. The value to making this type of list is that it allows you to create much more effective rubrics that allow you to show student growth, all the way from that very low comprehend level to, in the case of this world-class outcome, evaluate. Now we're going to move into the last part of the deconstruction process. In the last part, what we want to do is we want to take a look at the knowledge that we identified with our world-class outcome, which in this case was relationships, cause and effects, predictions, and outcomes, and see how that compares to the transdisciplinary theme of this unit. So this unit, the transdisciplinary theme was sharing the planet, how the world works. Now if you take a look at that transdisciplinary theme and the nouns that were identified as part of this world-class outcome, it's very easy to see there is a clear correlation. Now this is a critical step in this process, because what we want to be able to do is identify that our high-quality unit planners are correlating to what students are being evaluated in the EPR. And in this last process, we can do that and show that with fidelity.